Okay, so now we're going to discuss industry analysis. This is a topic that would be covered in greater detail in a strategy class, but because most of my students have not yet had strategy or maybe currently in strategy, I cover it in this course. It's important to have an idea of strategy in preparing a business plan. So I want you to think about a question here. Sears is a diversified company that has 6 lines of business. The company's management states that all of these businesses are essential to its competitive future. And the following table describes the different businesses' contribution to revenue and profits. So you can see here that they're a corporation and they have different business units, and this is each business unit's percentage of revenue and percentage of profit. And as you can see, this is kind of a play on the actual business of Sears, which recently went bankrupt and I guess has been saved from bankruptcy for the moment. And so this is based on an actual type of corporation that has multiple business units. And so this is an important concept from strategy, and what we're trying to do is explain the variability in the sales and profit across Sears' business. In what business is Sears more successful, and explain your answer. Now this question comes from an exam that was given in a class that I used to be a teaching assistant for at University of Minnesota, and this was a professor who was previously at Wharton, so this is the type of question that you would see at a school like that. And I'll just give you a hint that this is a harder question to answer than you might think. What I'd like you to think about is answer this question. Take a few minutes to think through a logic. And if I were to do this in class, I would ask people in the class to give their answer and then explain the logic. So, why are there differences in these revenue and profit numbers? And in what business is Sears more successful? Explain your answer. So think about that, and then we'll move on. So before I reveal the answer to that question, I want you to think about this question. If any of you watch sports, invariably there's this type of question of who's the greatest ever, or greatest of all time, the GOAT. And often these questions are made about who's the best athlete ever. You're probably familiar with people like Michael Jordan and Tiger Woods, Usain Bolt. This guy here is a wrestler from Russia who was undefeated for 18 years. This lady here, Heather McKay, played badminton. You can Google her. She's also undefeated for many years and had the championship for many years. There's Michael Phelps, who was a swimmer, had maybe more gold medals than anybody. So who's the best athlete? Think about that for a second. Who do you think the best athlete is? Well, that's an interesting question, and so we're going to come back to it. Before we kind of get into this in greater detail, I just want to talk about a few vocabulary terms. So in this class we're going to focus on a business, which we call a firm, and a firm with their suppliers, competitors, customers, that forms an industry. And then there's other things that affect that industry that we call the macro environment: policies, laws, technology, demographics, all of these things. And a few more terms. A market is a group of customers. So the reason I mention this is because people confuse these terms. They call a market an industry and vice versa. A market is a group of customers. The industry is the people that the companies and suppliers and customers that you're competing with or cooperating with. A segment is a subcategory of a market. A strategic group is a group of firms that are following similar strategies. Okay, now we're coming back to the question at the beginning. If you're listening to this, I'll tell you that the answer to that question is that we cannot tell which business the corporation is best in. I'll go back to those slides real quick. When I ask this question, many times people will say, well, if you take the profit and percentage of profit and divide it by the percentage of revenue, then you could see which is highest. So in that case, that would be probably consumer credit cards, because 17 divided by 6 is the highest number among these. And then other people will say, oh, but it's the percentage of profit as a raw number that's most important. So insurance is they're more successful at insurance. But the key is that we're trying to figure out, well, why are they making different percentages of revenue and profit? And the key is that they're competing in different industries, and the conditions in different industries are different. And that's why these numbers look the way that they do. So now let's fast forward again here. So industry structure exerts an effect on all firms in the industry. So that's an important, very important concept. So let's say a firm has 6% profit. Part of that 6% comes because they're competing in a particular industry. And then part of that comes because of what the firm is doing relative to the rest of the competitors in the industry. So, for example, if the average in an industry, the profit margin is 4%, if you have 6% profit margin, that means you're doing better than average. But if the average profit margin in an industry is 14%, and you only have a 6% profit margin, that means that you're not doing well at all. So this is important. It's important for you, not just as kind of a theoretical idea, but this is important for you to be able to understand and check your assumptions. Now see, let's look at this chart here. This is an important chart that explains how different industries have different profitability numbers. You can see security brokers and dealers, their profitability is much higher. Airlines, much lower profitability. Now, why is that? Well, we're going to explain that in the next video, but the key is to understand at this point that there's just differences in industries. Just like there's differences in sports, there's difference in industries, so we cannot compare between different industries. We can only compare within an industry. So going back to that question at the beginning, we cannot compare between the industries. We have to compare within an industry to see if they're doing better than other firms in the industry. So we'll end there and have the next video.